Hi, welcome. I'm here with Luka Babic, the co-founder of Orgnostic. Luka, great seeing you.
Good to see you again.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing what's happening with Orgnostic, and in particular, you all have taken advantage of what's happening with generative AI. So if you would, please share a bit.
No, it's extremely exciting time, I think. It's an exciting time to be alive, especially in the people analytics space. And I mean, we were sharing the bits and pieces on like our take on generative AI as a driver of UX change, of how people are interacting with data and how they will be interacting with data. What we saw as an opportunity is just utilizing the chat approach to getting information from your data systems. So first, we wanted to capitalize on all the data engineering work that we've done on the normalization engine, the meta model of the platform and everything. And once we already had that in order, the next question was like, how do we challenge the dashboarding, traditional dashboarding paradigm, right? Mm-hmm. That's one of the things that all of our team has constantly struggled with when it comes to implementation of people analytics, and that's distributing dashboards to HR people and then never interacting with them. And the other problem that we noticed was, quite many of the requests that, relatively expensive people analytics teams and the workforce that is working them, like PhDs, can be reduced down to query monkey tasks, and that's something that we wanted to put a stop on with just being able to automatize all of these questions that are coming to anything that is like related to what was our turnover, our number of joiners in a particular time of year, in a particular department, all those questions that just require time, and that you can support no matter the time zones or whatever through a simple mechanism on the platform. So it's I think it's very exciting. It's one of those things that are likely going to challenge the way that we are interacting with data in the future.
Yeah. As you're sharing this, I have to just call it a reality of our times, is we have a lot of excitement in the space around the use of data and AI as a facilitator to access data in not only a meaningful way, but at a speed and a scale that is unprecedented. Yeah. Yet, there's a couple things happening, and you alluded to it. The actual action that's happening based on the insight often doesn't occur, and that asks the question why. Meanwhile, a lot of people analytics teams have been downsized over the past 6 months to a year, given the state of the economic environment. Yet the need for this insight has not gone away. So arguably the answer needs to be around heightened efficiency and effectiveness of the tool sets that organizations do have. And you're not only serving enterprises, you're serving small and medium-sized businesses, correct me if I'm wrong. So as organizations think about leveraging data to formulate their talent strategies, right-sizing the workforce, return to workplace, if we can even use that term anymore, or hybrid work more generally, what would you advise them to think about in terms of creating that team, creating that technology that enables people analytics to be distributed throughout an organization?
Yeah, well, there are a couple of, I'm always trying to think about what are the tasks that are repetitive tasks, what are the tasks that are menial, what are the manual tasks that require expensive labor, right? And the first one that always comes to mind is the data engineering front, right? We know that like one specific aspect of HR data and HR systems is the multiplicity of those and the fact that the data is never going to come in a perfect format, right? And utilizing tools, I mean, obviously we're working on Orgnostic, but there are probably other tools as well on the market that can help with automating the data engineering layer, as ETL, right? So you don't overly spend time on repetitive flat file manipulations and similar, is something that I would definitely advise to anyone, just because it's extremely hard to get data engineering talent in HR teams, especially now. The other one is just anything that is self-service related. But I think one of the things that when people think about self-service, they tend to think about the dashboarding paradigm and like building dashboards in Power BI. And one of the one of the downsides of thinking about that is, there are multiple benefits of visualizing data through Power BI and having that kind of flexibility. On the other hand, it's requiring additional workforce, right? It's requiring people that are going to know how to manipulate data, that will need to set up the permissions at the level of every dashboard that they're generating and similar, which is another time suck, right? So this is something that companies really need to think about of whether that's the effective use of their time internally, or whether they can outsource that to technology. And the last one is the distribution of that data, and that's how people are interacting with it. You can kind of send dashboards to HR and expect that they're going to have interactions with that, but that's usually not what happens in reality, right? So you need to have a certain number of pull and push mechanisms that are going to distribute that data at the right timing. And this is where automation can be helpful, just because you cannot achieve that scale with just hiring people in the teams. And I feel that those three things are the key kind of time suck elements when it comes to implementation of people analytics. Not to talk about the educational layer, right? The kind of upskilling. I think that's a huge part of just getting people aware of all the use cases that can, where people analytics can really be supportive. And from that perspective, I think, partnering up with someone who can help you bring the level of skill in the team, data literacy levels, to the point where data becomes sort of a natural kind of reaction or response to any sort of challenge is definitely the things that I would think of if I was right now in the role of head of people analytics.
If I'm a CHRO and I'm listening to you and I have reporting needs, I have to base my strategy on the best data available, not only what's happening inside my organization, but in talent markets. What should I be thinking about in terms of purchasing? Is it a person-first approach? Is it a technology-first approach? Is it a process-first approach? I mean, what are your thoughts there?
I mean, there are multiple levels of maturity of the companies, right, that you need to take into account when it comes to those variables that you're mentioning. One of the typical answers that I would have to a question like that would be to, of course, the assess the level of aptitude and the culture or the climate in the company that is related to making data-driven decisions, right? I think that drives quite a lot of tempo of adoption of people analytics in organizations. So that's the first thing. But maybe it's just my biased approach when it comes to technology implementation, but I would definitely think about that. I find it completely obsolete that in 2022 we're thinking about building internal people analytics teams that are numbering 50, hundreds, or dozens of people. I don't think that's an extremely efficient way of using people's time, and especially the talent that you're bringing teams that are like usually PhD level data scientists and internally, which are at times very hard to justify as a cost if you don't really come up with hard evidence on how business is going to be better. And the reality, like my approach or advice for a CHRO in that sense, is after kind of evaluating what is the level of intake, is focusing on a specific use case and trying to make that scalable. And the only way to make it scalable is to implement technology that can scale with the organization, so you don't linearly grow functionalities within the organization.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, because number one, I agree. Number two, it's the case that I'm still hearing chief people officers, CHROs, and the like saying we're not there yet, that it's constantly the back burner, this notion of people analytics or workforce planning, when in fact, I don't see how it can be a back burner thing, given this day and age. How are you going to base these critical decisions, which, depending on the size of your organization, are in the millions or if not tens of millions of dollars over time? So again, the pointed question to those who say, we're not there yet, what's your response?
Well, you're never going to be there, and that's the reality. And no matter if it's a small organization, because I've heard that excuse when we were just starting Orgnostic. Our main goal at the time was to kind of help even SMBs, companies that are like 200, 300, 2,000 employees, be able to start early so they don't generate data debt, don't generate organizational debt as they scale, because at some point it's just going to be a necessity, right? It is the usual sort of response to that is we don't have a good quality data or something like that. So, you know, we approach it like, okay, here's a free plan where you can do the data quality check and just go do a data health scan if that is something that is going to make you more comfortable with making better decisions. But in the reality, I think there is some fear and the back burner because of the pressure from the board level on some specific operational stuff. And from that perspective, I don't think that preaching to the choir and preaching to HR people is enough for our community to actually thrive. We really need to go and create cases so that here at TALREOS we don't only have CHROs or heads of people analytics that are present, that we actually have CEOs thinking about these cases and thinking about how much of an impact this can create from the intangibles perspective right now from their point of view.
Yeah.
And I think that is a critical tectonic shift that needs to change in this field to really make it a truly a new paradigm in business.
Already hearing that happening in select organizations, which frankly are too few. The emphasis, rightly so, on human capital juxtaposition next to financial capital and how they interrelate. And if you can have a data-driven view of that interaction, you can make wiser decisions, not only to deal with short-term financial realities, but also make sure you have the skill sets and workforce to accommodate changes in strategy and what you want to achieve moving forward. So yeah, I'm both excited and like, everyone, let's get with the game. Let's move forward.
No, and it's exactly it. I don't think, you know, we're going to go backwards anyways. It's just a matter of tempo and speed of the adoption. And I think the way the technology is shaping right now and the speed of its development is just something that needs to be embraced by the organizations. I think that quite many organizations have this kind of anxious approach when it comes to even testing some of the things that are related to you know, generative AI or capabilities that it can at least produce. You know, people are kind of stuck with OpenAI. I mean, it's not the only algorithm or framework that exists out there. There's so many different alternatives that you can play with, so you can kind of get more out of less resources that you might, you know, that your reality might be at the moment. Right?
And to your point, like, get started, play with it, experiment, and where do you want to adopt moving forward? So yeah, no, I love your narrative around it, and I just
the risk is actually extremely low, right? Yeah. So the risk of implementation, especially if we're talking about SMBs, I do understand the dynamics of enterprises being a bit slower, and that's the reality of just the size of the organization. But especially on the SMB, and I think that just needs to be something that is just a daily agile sort of way of just testing and being able to discard things that don't work in a relatively fast manner too.
Well, again, congratulations on what you've built and your continued growth. How can people learn more about you and Orgnostic? Well,
I mean, channels that we usually use to present is like website and LinkedIn. We're super active on LinkedIn, where most of the HR community lives anywhere. I think we're doing, with Cole Napper, we're doing quite a lot of things on like creating these events for the community in our lounge, and we have at least 2 events every month that are happening. One of these coffee chats with a relatively close ones, and some session. We're building we actually published a learning hub, which is a series of different master classes that are courses generated by the practitioners in the field. Again, with the idea of upskilling and making knowledge a bit more available for HR people everywhere. Especially knowledge on data and how they can utilize, like what are the use cases that they can use on a daily basis. So those are the kind of main places where people can find us, and usually on LinkedIn everything is, you can find everything there. Yeah, everything is there.
Yeah, I just want to highlight the lounge. You're doing great work there. You're doing great work across the board, so please keep it up, sir. Thanks for sharing, and have a great trip back home, and happy birthday to your boy.
Thanks a lot.
All right, thank you for joining us. Be well.